Hello and welcome to this series of instructional videos on EcoSim Building Designer V8i. And in this session, we'll be looking at georeferencing. We'll be taking a look at Google Earth, creating our own site terrain model in 3D, and going further than that and taking a look at some of the greener utilities inside of Building Designer. We're looking at a file that, for all intents and purposes, is just a normal 2D file. But more than that, if we come to our Tools pull-down menu, we come down to Geographic and open as a toolbox, then click on the first icon on the left, you'll see in our geographic coordinate system that we do actually have a geographic coordinate system attached to this file, courtesy of the European Petroleum Survey Group. And this is very important because the lay of the land and the setting out of the site is down to those surveyors and the civil engineers. And we need to coordinate with them extremely closely. And Building Designer gives us every single tool to do that so very efficiently. So now, let's start coordinating our design work with their design work as a project team. First off, we're going to go to File and go to New. In our new file name, we're going to call this 3D site. And also in our seed file, we're going to make sure our designseed.dgn is our seed file. After that, we just click Save. Our civil engineering surveyors data goes back to the server. Our new file opens 3D site. And we need to do two things before we can really start using georeferencing and Building Designer's incredible tool set to enable us to do this. First off, we need to come down to our bottom left-hand corner to our view groups. Left click on your mouse button over the number 4 and keep it down over the number 3. Turns off 2 of the 4 views that are currently open in the background. Now we need to come up to our window pull down and click on Tile. Now we have 2 perfectly proportioned windows sharing our design space. We're going to come to our task navigation bar here, and inside that we're going to come to View Rotation. In that we're going to change both of these views to a top view. From there, we can bring in our 2 disparate forms of data, our georeference file and our fledgling structure that we've been bringing on since its inception in conceptual modeling all the way through to this point. We could use, if we go up to our primary taskbar, we could use references to do this in. But perhaps a more efficient way of doing it is to come right almost to the end to Project Explorer. Project Explorer opens up and just nudges in next to our task-based interface. If we pass our cursor over it and click on Links, we can twirl down on project directories, then under Building Sample US, and then under Designs. Following that, we can come down that list of designs to see underbar site2d.dgn, highlight site plan, and then drag and drop it into our design space. The Attach Source Files dialog box opens up with the attachment method is recommended. We're going to click on that jump box and change that to coincident, and then click OK. Let's go back to Project Explorer, where this time we're going to click on and twirl down Mass Model, select and highlight Design Model, and then drag and drop that in the same way, and make sure it's a coincident. Once we've done that, we come back to our view navigation, and we're going to fit both of those views. So here we have it, 2 disparate sets of data on the same design plane. But what we need to do now is marry them up so they all reference the same exact points on the planet. In our left-hand view, we're going to fit in a georeference survey. And in our right-hand view, we're going to zoom in into our structure. And now this is where the beauty of Building Designer really kicks in. Because we are first going to have a look at our geographic coordinate system and discover that there is none currently in our file. But that makes no difference because what Building Designer is enable us to define a placemark monument point. We're going to click on this icon, 5th in from the left, 6th from the right, and you can see straight away that we have a source up at the top here. We want to click that and say Reference with Geographic Coordinate System. This changes the dialog box, and now we need to click on the jump box into Reference and select our C underbar Site 2D. We can also give it a fancy name, but Placemark 1 will suit our needs exactly because what we're going to do now is that we're going to zoom into the footprint of the building, which the surveyors and civil engineers have kindly laid out for us. We're going to place a tentative point at the corner at the bottom left. And now what we're going to do, we're going to place that monument point on our structure. And by doing so, we're going to be placing it and imbuing our model with georeferencing data. So we click once with our left mouse button at the same spot in the bottom left-hand corner of our structure, and then we just click and right-click. We then come to the top right-hand corner and diametrically opposite, and we do the same. We place a tentative point there. We move into the right-hand side where our structure is. We click once, twice with our left mouse button, right click to reset. The more points you make, the more accurate it will be, but 2 will do us exactly for this moment. And now what we can do now is again come back to our geographic coordinate system, and it currently says that we don't have a coordinate system until we click on this third icon here from place marks, and you can see that we actually are imbuing this model now with an azimuthal equal area of these 2 place marks with longitude and latitude. So we're going to click OK. We now have a geographic coordinate system, and now we need to line these 2 files up, and the best and easiest way to do that is come to our primary taskbar and our references. Make sure you have your C underbar site 2D DGN highlighted, and in the bottom of my dialog box here there's an option called Geo-Referenced. In the jump box I'm going to click on it and I'm going to say reprojected. Then if I use my view navigation to fit view, you'll notice now that our structure is perfectly aligned to our georeference file. Georeferencing is just one aspect of how we can control, collaborate, and move towards creating a 3-dimensional terrain model. Building Designer also has a unique partnership with the likes of Google Earth, and that's what we're going to be using now to help us create our terrain site. Before we do that, we may want to look at some of the settings we may need for this particular session. We're going to come on this icon here, third in from the right, Google Earth Settings. In Google Earth Tool Settings, these are some of the settings you may want to have on. And under Captured Geometry, make sure you have it captured as a B-spline surface. And with that, we can click OK. Because now we have a georeferenced file. We need to place this, or we need to be able to look at this in situ in Google Earth. And to do that, we come back to our geographic toolbar, choose this icon in, 6th in from the left, 5 in from the right, synchronize with Google Earth View. Once you click on that, Google Earth opens and brings with it the wealth of data that you've come to expect with Google Earth. And to that end, we want to be able to just move our site into more of a central location onto our screen here, because what we're going to do now is we're going to extract the underlying metadata from Google Earth and bring it in to our design session in Building Designer. So once we've done that, we're going to minimize Google Earth. We're going to come back to our geographic toolbar, and we're going to use the 4th icon in from the left, Capture Google Earth Image. Once we do that, down in the bottom left-hand corner of Building Designer, we get a prompt. Enter data point to capture the current Google Earth image. We're going to click in our left-hand view here, and then we wait while Building Designer communicates with Google Earth and extracts all the necessary data. And there we have it. It looks as though there are 2 grids. In fact, if you press Control B on your keyboard, View Attributes will open. In that, we can turn off Grid and click on this icon here to apply to all open views. And you can see it's not actually a grid. What it is actually, it's a B-spline representation of that surface. But if we rotate that to, say, our front view, you can see that our surface from Google Earth sits a little higher than our actual geo-referenced file. So what we can do is right-click, say Move. You can see AccuDraw and AccuSnap helping us out here, bringing it down in concert with where we are in our design. Now, if we return that back to isometric, and if we change the display style to Illustration, Default, you can see that not only have we brought in our Google Earth data, but we've also brought in the satellite imagery as well. What happens if we don't want that? We come to our task-based interface here on the left and click the visualization toolbar. If we go 6 rows down and 4 in, Query Material, and the Query Material dialog box opens, we need to actually change this. So we're going to come to the 4th icon in from the left called Remove Attachment. Select that with your left mouse button, then pass your cursor over the imagery and you'll see it highlights. Click once to select it, click again to remove it. And now the imagery has been taken away, but we still have a terrain at our fingertips. Taking this one step further, it'd be great now that we have a terrain to perhaps be able to imprint some of the civil engineers and surveyors' design data onto this fledgling terrain model. And to do that, we're going to come to our top view. We're going to start selecting some of the road design. We're going to hold down our Control key and just left mouse button, click over some of this design work. Now that we have all of our necessary line work copied, including our coastline here, what we can do now is hover over one of these lines and right click, choose copy, come to the end of one of these lines, click once to accept it, twice to copy it, and then right click to reset. All we need to do now is press Control E for level display, right click on Site 2D, uncheck the display. All we're left with is our line work of the civil engineer's designs. What we can do now, though, is go one step further, because now we can take this work and imprint it onto the terrain surface that we pulled in from Google Earth. To do that, we need to come across to Solid Modeling tab in our task-based interface, and first off, we need to come to Solid by Extrusion, because our terrain is only 1 pixel deep, and it'd probably be a lot better if we gave it a bit more muscle. Before we do that, we're going to select a part and family. We're going to select Site, and underneath that, we're going to select Earth. Now, the reason we do that is going to help us out in the long run, because it's imbuing our model with even more information. Now, our Solid by Extrusion dialog box is open. Make sure orthogonal is checked. You can check distance, because we're going to thicken this by 2 feet across the whole terrain, but there's another way of doing it. If I zoom into the corner here and select it with AccuDraw and AccuSnap helping, you'll notice the compass of AccuDraw has gone a bit awry. Here are 3 power tips to help you orientate this so much better. If you press T on your keyboard, you'll get a top rotation, and it will only go in the XY plane. S is for side, and F is for front. In this case, we're going to use F for front, and you'll see the Y field is highlighted in my AccuDraw. I'm going to punch in 2.0 for 2 feet. And straight away, all I have to do now is click, and my site has been thickened to a depth of 2 feet across the whole site. And now, with all of this, we can come down to our next row down in our Solid Modeling tab, Draw on Solid. In Draw on Solid dialog, you want to check the 4th icon in, Imprint Curves. And with that, what we're going to do is we're going to select the terrain first, and it'll hatch line with a green hatch line. In my case, you click once more, left mouse button to accept, and after that, we're going to come to our top side, and we're going to start accepting and pressing the control button at the same time to accept the civil design work that we have imprinted on to our model, and also the surveying work, the coastline. And now let go of the control key, and all you have to do is click once and right click. And you'll notice how your site has almost changed perceptibly in the right hand view, because the terrain has now changed with it. What we can do now is simply delete the lines that we copied to create that stencil on top of our site. Now, with those lines imprinted onto the surface of our terrain, what better thing to do than actually make them a little bit more real, in the sense of giving them some more depth. We come to our Solid Modeling task again, and we come down 4 rows and to the second one in, Modify Solid Entity. In the Modify Solid Entity dialog box, choose the second icon in from the left. Also make sure distance and extrude faces are checked, and in the distance, you can enter in the value of 8 to be 8 inches. Because what we're going to do now is that we're going to come in here, we're going to select one of the areas, you move your mouse inside of it, click once more to accept that, and then you need to just raise that up by a matter of 8 inches, like a classic curb. And there we have it. All the roads of our site have now been elevated, all the areas bounding them have been elevated by almost a curb height 8 inches. And now if we zoom back into our structure, you can see that we still have those markers that show us where the cutting planes of our original sections are. So let's go and impose one of those sections, and this will help us coordinate, bringing together both our emerging 3D terrain model and our georeference file. Because now we can come up to our view navigation, rotate this to front, and you can see that our terrain is actually just sitting below our actual georeference file. So what we need to do here is select our terrain, move right to move, and now it's just a matter of moving this to meet the bottom left-hand corner of our structure. And obviously when we do this, obviously have to be some fill right underneath the right-hand portion of our structure. But we can also come into any of the views. If we turn this to the right-hand side, again, we get another sectional view of it. Let's rotate this back to an isometric. We could turn off that section and come back now and having a look at the ability of Building Designer to bring in and to reference in multiple different formats from other designers anywhere they be. We're going to bring this down because we'd like to add some context to where our fledgling structure is beginning to emerge from literally our site. And to do that, we're going to come up to our primary taskbar to our references. We're going to come into our references to attach reference. And with that, we're going to come back to our project folder and we're going to open up our SketchUp folder, and inside that we're going to click to open up our site context. All you need to do with this is click OK. And straight away you can see now that we have viable context of other structures in or around the site that we can use in context with how our structure is being developed. And that is creating a site model with EcoSim Building Designer V8i. Thank you very much.